Hello, everybody. Hey, how you doing out there? Today is December 20th, getting close to the end of the year in 2023. And you're watching or listening to Going Viral. And so far tonight, we have Dennis Goldstein and Mike Jankowicz and Ken Aaron. And then we're going to start off by talking about something that's, I don't believe it might have happened once before in American history. A candidate has been disqualified to run for president by the state of Colorado making that declaration, and it was approved by the Supreme Court of Colorado. I guess somebody objected to it. I don't know the chain of evidence of how this was decided. The chain of evidence, who decided first and who had to approve it. But I did hear the one thing which is not always reported. There were seven judges, and four of them came from elitist colleges in the Northeast, like Yale, Harvard, whatever. And three of them came from, I think it was University of Virginia. And they were all Democrats, they were all appointed by Democratic governors, something like that, during the regime of Democratic governors. But three of them voted against it, and four of them voted for it to support it. Now, I think it's just for the primary, but if you don't get in the primary, you can't run in the main election. And it was only done for one side, the Republican Party candidate, one candidate, Donald D. Trump, I think it is, and there was no scrutiny and nobody put up to say, well, this guy can't run. Let's say it was Fetterman, So I say can't run because he's had a seizure. He had what do they call that? Blood clot in the brain. Or they can't. This guy can't run because he owns a bar or he's connected to this or that. Most people have skeletons in the closet. But in this case, they did it according to the dictates or under the rubric of Article 14, Section 3, which we'll go over. So before we even do that, who's for just reading that out loud? I think I'll read that out loud. It's very short. And then we can go and take the opinions of everybody here. So I know I have it somewhere here, so just give me a moment. Okay, so it looks like you can see that now. What does the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment say? Section 3 of the Civil War, it's the Civil War era 14th Amendment. It says, no person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, who having previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. Okay, so that's it. That's Section 3. And this is really an extract, so I'm not reading it from the Constitution, because the following paragraph says, even if someone is found to be ineligible to serve, the amendment says Congress can overturn that decision with a 2/3 majority. So when technically in the Constitution, when it says the Congress, I assume they mean the House, or maybe it means 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. And it says here, just for background, the provision was mainly used between its ratification in the aftermath of the Civil War and the 1872 enactment of the Amnesty Act, according to Congressional Research Service report. Now, I don't know what the Amnesty Act was, But between the Civil War ended in 1865, I think. And this is 1872. So that's a good 7 years. I could look that up, but I'm sure Mike will know because I'm not a historian. I have trouble finding out where I left my keys. I have to ask my wife, where are my keys? Okay, so I read the third section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And to me, the question is that I have, who makes that decision that an individual has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the thing that he swore he would defend, and or given aid to the enemies thereof? Who makes that decision? Is it the courts? In other words, is it the executive branch? And what body has the right to do that? Can it be any one of the states? Can it be a territory, let's say like Puerto Rico or Guam or Panama or whatever, or, somewhere in a base? Or can it be a city or the New Jersey Port of Authority? The Port of Authority thing, which is New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, I think. Or can it be a city, or can it be a borough president, or can it be the somebody, the HOA for a large condominium? Who has the authority to make such a declaration, even in their territory, that they decided this guy is insurrection, not of Colorado, not of the Colorado Constitution, of the United States Constitution at a federal level? The state is deciding that this guy is unacceptable to run in a national election. So the obvious consequences of that are not this election alone. It's a question of what would that do to our entire electoral process, corrupt or uncorrupt or good as bad as it is. What would this thing do? And so now let's go. Let's go to Mike, because he's going to tell us the story. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's wishful thinking. I think what we do need to see is the actual amendment from the Constitution, but that isn't even the point. The point is that Trump, if we accept what he did as fact, then Trump gave aid and comfort to those people giving insurrection. So according to that, he could be denied the right. Again, Colorado, it's not a call by a state court, but then again, the state courts have been doing a lot of screwy things in favor of Republicans. So I guess this is maybe, poetic justice. But on the other hand, much as I'd love to see Trump barred from every state in running, first of all, it's a primary. And the fact of the matter is, if the party wants to put him up as a primary, it's really a decision of the party. It doesn't mean he can serve in office. But the key thing that everybody's missing, and they're all talking about what does the 14th Amendment say? The fact is, he hasn't been convicted yet.
Right.
I mean, he's got to be convicted in a court of law, in a federal court, of having done that. Then once having done that, he can be barred. So I think that's why I think it was
political.
Well, it's going to be overturned by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, it can be overturned. It doesn't have to be a political partisan thing. It's really not a political or partisan thing. It seems like that, but it really isn't. It's just a matter of, can you just decide that this person has done this without them having been convicted? And the Supreme Court is probably saying no, even though this Supreme Court wants to give states all the rights it possibly can. It's not going to do, it certainly has the ability to say, the logical ability to say, no, you can't do that until he's been convicted. Because how do we know he did it? Because the media said, I believe he did do this, but that doesn't mean I know it or I proved it. So that's it.
Well, yeah, that's correct. So, Just before we go in, I got a series of questions. Dennis, what do you put on this? I know I would put money that you don't like Donald Trump, but that's not enough of a reason to stop him from running. You with us, Dennis? Or Dennis may come back. So before we go into another problem with it, what do you think that these 4 people who voted to support this in the Supreme Court of Colorado were stupid enough to imagine that the U.S. Supreme Court would not overturn them? I mean, it's obvious they're going to have to overturn them because theoretically, any DA, a state DA, could make an accusation about somebody that they did things harmful or they colluded with the enemy. They did something to support ISIS or North Korea or some enemy, and therefore they're not qualified, and then go to court with it, just like that's happening in New York State, where there was a DA who ran on the concept, I'm going to get Trump, I'm going to get Trump, I'm going to make him, put him on a pillory, and then goes ahead and continues to say that all the time, that they're trying to prosecute him for a very nebulous quote, crime, unquote, which isn't on the books, which they invented, that he falsely used an appraised value for a property that was higher than it should be, but there was nobody damaged. No, there was no consequence, bad consequence. It's just
a victimless
crime, if it is a crime, and it isn't listed in the statute as a crime. But
well, it is. I believe it is a crime. He did look. What he did is not unusual among real estate people.
Yeah.
And what they basically did, is because he kept everything on a high profile. Basically, if he was smart, he would have kept everything on a low profile. But you can't do that when you're running for president. So basically, that's basically what he did. He said, in other words, he put all of his stuff out there. He wouldn't release information, etc. So he kind of like, even if the state of New York didn't want to prosecute him, they might feel that they had to. I'm talking about the thing in the state of New York, this which is just a financial case.
I don't want to say. You think it was the state of New York or that DA, the woman? I don't know her name.
Well, she represents the state of New York.
I don't think so. I really don't.
She is the.
She's not busy representing the state of New York. She's busy attacking Trump.
Wait, Ken. She doesn't represent the population necessarily of New York, but she represents the official, the state government of New York. Let's put it that way.
Okay, perhaps.
But the fact of the matter is, so she brought this case. That case is, he kind of, Trump's problem is he keeps on, keeps on pushing things into the limelight. He's not careful. So this is now a big case. The main thing is the case has been decided. It's just about how much money they're going to hit him for. And again, the more he kept his mouth shut, the less money it probably would have been. But unfortunately, keeping his mouth shut is not one of Trump's assets if he has it.
Well, yeah.
No, but getting back to the original point, the Colorado thing.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of problems with this thing, which is that, I think what the judges might have been saying is, if he has done these things, I didn't see the actual ruling, but if he has, I don't know if they decided that he had done these things, but he says, if he has, he is not eligible. And if that's the case, so what they may have ruled is, because when because there's a trial going on right now, right as we speak, trial going on, he has charges brought against him, which would basically fill that, make that charge viable. If he loses this case in court, then he will be eligible to be barred under the 14th Amendment. So that's one of the cases that's against him. So basically, what they're saying is, what this thing is saying is, if he's convicted, then yes, he can be taken off the ballot in Colorado. On the other, I mean, in other words, that may be, in other words, one of these preemptive strikes, shall we say, or setting the pattern, so that it can be just triggered. What they used to call the trigger laws. They so that as soon as he's convicted, boom, he can't run in Colorado. That's probably going to be the upshot of it. And what they're trying to say, I guess, is until the case is decided, he can't run. If he's exonerated, then he can run. That might hold some water if he was a clear and present danger. In other words, they'd have to show he was a clear and present danger to the security of the United States, which means that he fully intended to start another insurrection. And I don't think there's any hard proof of that yet. So I think the Supreme Court is just going to say, even if they wanted to, they would be hard pressed to not overturn that. And personally, I think that when it comes to federal elections, states should have less say in how they're run. So if I'm going to say that, because I don't like the way some of the states, are trying to set things up so that it's more Republican favored, which states like Florida and Georgia was doing, and some of the states down that part of the country are trying to set things up when they're Republican controlled to say, well, we can subvert the vote. We can make it harder to vote under these circumstances. We can set all these standards. I don't think that should hold for any type of federal election. In other words, any time where anybody elected would have a direct effect on the running of the country as a whole. However, if I'm going to say that, then I have to say the same thing holds for this. The state doesn't have a right to say who can run for president. That's the federal court should be saying that. So that's my opinion. Don't get me wrong.
Right, because it's a federal office.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong. I'd love to see Trump thrown off of, not be allowed to run in every state.
Yeah, but okay, but
do it.
That's a subject,
yes,
you recognize that it's a 40-40 split,
That's my wish and my desire. But guess what? If it doesn't, in other words, we have to have a society that runs under the law. And we also, if we start playing fast and loose games with the law, then it can come back to haunt you when it works against you. So if you don't want Trump to run, I don't think that's the way to do it. But I don't think it's going to work. Let's put it that way.
Okay. 1 second.
See if you can get Dennis back.
Competence. Okay. He's doing his impersonation of Joe Biden before he has his meds, that wakes him up. Let's see. Hey, I can't, there's no way I can goose him or make a loud sound over there.
No, but
all right. Anyway. Hey, hello. Dennis. This is the fairy dust queen. Open up, Dennis.
He may have other important things to do.
Okay. Oh no, you're not watching. You're just talking on the phone or something.
Well, I'm on my phone. I'm linked into this, but
without video.
But yeah, and you don't want to see the video anyway. I just spent 6 days.
I know, but I'm wearing such a nice shirt today. No, he's sitting there with his mouth open, like you want to put a carrot in it or something. Wait. I think I saw a motion. Hey, Dennis, come on. No, not yet. So I want to bring up this one other thing. I just put it in to look it up. I think, including results of a president to be removed for mental incompetence, the 25th Amendment. How do we decide? How do we decide whether the president is competent? Okay. So the 25th Amendment, right, says the president is not able to do the job in addition to impeachment. And specifically, Section 4 of the amendment is the only other way the Constitution provides for the removal of a president. Impeachment has a legal definition, high crimes and misdemeanors, but the 25th Amendment addresses the problem of fitness for office, and here the nation is in uncharted territory. So likewise, a state could come up and say, because of the 25th Amendment, Mr. Fetterman can't run for president, because he's not capable of doing the job. He can't put two sentences together. No fault of his own. He had this, unfortunate, what do they call it? Not a heart attack or whatever. Stroke. That's what it's called, a stroke. And, so he's he's not competent to do this, and therefore he can't run. I understand this 25th Amendment is to remove a president, but I think it's valid cause not to allow him to run to be president. That kind of a thing.
Well, that may not be the Constitution, but you make a general point that I think is exact. It goes with what I was saying, which is that, yeah, if you start playing games like this, then when somebody's running, somebody can make a claim that, let's say that Joe Biden has done something that jeopardizes the security of the United States. I'll just make something up. It'll be total bullshit. But if it's unproven, it shouldn't have any traction. Okay.
But even if it's okay, yeah, all right. But you're on a thin ice when you say proven. You've been in the court, right?
Well, I know that. Just because it's proven in court doesn't mean it's
true.
It's supposed to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, and that unfortunately doesn't happen as often as it should. However, if it's not even brought to court, then what are we talking about? I mean, do I believe personally, from the evidence I've seen, that Trump aided and abetted, gave comfort and aid to those committing an insurrection? I do believe it. However, somebody else can say, well, I don't believe it. I mean, you've got to have some sort of accepted proof. It's the same thing as truth. We have to agree on something. And what we seem to have agreed on, or we're supposed to agree on in this country, is if he's convicted in a court of law. But he hasn't been convicted in a court of law.
No. He has to be convicted of insurrection. He could be convicted of rape in a court of law. He can still run for president.
Yes. He has to be convicted of the crime for which he is being prevented from running, which is insurrection. But giving aid and comfort. Remember, he could be
aid and comfort to the enemies of the state.
To the insurrectionists.
No, it didn't say that. It said enemies.
That's why I want to see the actual thing from the 14th Amendment. I thought it said because it was really devised for the Civil War, which means that it gave aid and comfort to the Confederacy.
Right.
You cannot be. So I think and the Confederacy was considered an insurrection, not an enemy country, another country doing it. So I think he could be convicted. Let's say he could be exonerated or charged with certain things, but it could be established in court that he gave aid and comfort, even though he wasn't charged with that crime. And that may be sufficient. But everything is done now, because if you think about it, everything we know is from what people told us, journalists told us, etc. This is not a controlled environment. I hate to say it, and you know how fond I am of Donald Trump and how competent I think he is to hold any office, including an office in the ground floor of a toilet manufacturer. But the idea is that he is innocent until proven guilty, unless the government can say he is a clear and present danger, and therefore can be prevented from running from office until he exonerates himself. And of course, they have to have a reason for that. It's like putting somebody in jail before they're convicted.
Yeah.
You have to be able to show evidence, I guess, to a grand jury or something, that he is he is a clear and present danger, and therefore, prior to trial. So,
Yeah.
but
So just to let me read it again. This is an excerpt.
Yeah.
Who have previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So if somebody gave aid or comfort to Confederate soldiers at the time of the war, they were not qualified to run for president.
Right.
Or they were part of the Confederate Army, or when it says the enemies, so it doesn't have to be just the enemies thereof. It could have been like the French-American War, right? The War of 1812. That was before the Civil War, right? No.
Right, but I think this was all done because of the Civil War.
Yeah, but if there was somebody who gave support to the French when they were fighting with Americans, that kind of a thing, that's support to the enemies thereof. It doesn't have to be just Confederates.
No. But the thing is, the problem that we have here, and again, I believe he gave aid and comfort, but he could be claiming, look, I was giving him aid and comfort, but I didn't want them to raid the White House or something. He has all these excuses, and some of them are pretty flimsy. But in other words, they have to be disproven in a manner that's controlled, and that's what a court of law is.
Right.
In other words, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to disprove it because I'm going to, put it on the news," because we've seen the evidence.
Now we got to talk about a political reality. Okay, every time he gets what's the word? And charged with something. What do they call that? Injunction? Not injunction. Yeah. They say they come up with a bill of particulars and say you're going to court because we have
something to charge you with, basically.
Yeah, but what do they call that? I forgot something went in. I can't remember.
It could be an injunction. It could be an injunction. Well, an injunction.
Something like that. Every time he gets named, or you got another law code, so we're going to sue you for raping this girl. We're going to sue you for lying about Mar-a-Lago. We're going to sue you for crossing the street. We're going to sue you for insurrection. We're going to sue you for not cooperating with the impeachment. Whatever. Every time he gets sued, his polls go up because the public sees that it's all bullshit. They didn't do this with any past presidents that I can think of. Maybe they did. I don't know. They got Nixon out, but once he was out, that's it. Goodbye. He was pardoned by the next president. Ford.
They did it with Bill Clinton too. So
wait a minute. No. Wait. They came in. They tried to impeach Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. He did not get him. He did not get removed from office. I don't think there was any legal suit by any government agencies after his term of presidency. He was president for 8 years. I'm talking about, somebody could have sued him for, or they could sue Trump for his fucked up school thing, where he lied about what he was going to teach everybody. But that has to be after the term of president. And those are public civil suits or criminal suits, but they're not by the government. These are suits that are coming from the government.
Well, let's put it this way:
and every time that happens, his polls goes up.
But his polls go up because, remember, he's being attacked.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's legal. If he goes out there and it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he tried to overthrow the presidency of the United States.
Most people don't care.
And that he would do it again. The vast majority of his supporters would go, hey, You can't do that. That's our man. I mean, let's face it, a substantial minority, I hope it's still a minority, of this country doesn't even believe in the principles upon which this country is founded.
Yeah.
You know, they just say, yeah, if he wants
Well,
to be a dictator, that's okay with me.
that goes both ways, you know.
Look, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of bullshit coming from the far left also.
Right.
But the fact is that what I'm trying to say is, of course, his support's going to go up because people are going to call in, people are going to respond to the polls. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're going to say, you can't do that to that's our guy.
Yeah.
You can't do that to him.
Well,
I
he
want
did.
him to be a dictator.
I don't know if he came up with it, but he came up with a real good quote, what do you call it? Like a meme. They're coming for you and they're going through me. In other words, you're going to set a precedent. If they can do this to me, who's an ex-president and current president candidate, if they can do this shit to me, they're going to walk all over you. They're going to look at everything you do and make you sign these documents and everything. You know, they're going to regulate your up the ass because they can get away with it. If they can get away with it with me, with all my notoriety with the public and my money and the support I have, they're just trying to show you nobody they can roll over anybody. That's what that's what he says. So, you know, and that makes sense. You know, so he's a cad. Who cares? You know, it's like oh, you remember that movie The Third Man?
Yep.
And Orson Welles, right?
Right.
He was selling drugs, basically, or selling bad medicine that caused children to die.
Right.
I think that was his gimmick. But he's a very likable character. You'd say, like, yeah, he'd make a good mayor, you know?
Right. That's just it. That's probably the problem with the system. I mean, and with people today, maybe it's they watch too much TV, maybe it's too much computer time, or who knows what the reason is. But the fact of the matter is, in the old days, I remember my folks would say during the 1964 election, on election day, Barry Goldwater was approached. He was waiting online to vote, and he was approached by the Secret Service and said, "Do you want us to move you to the front of the line?" And Barry Goldwater said, No, I'm just a regular citizen. I don't have any more rights than anybody else. I'll wait my turn." Yeah. And I remember my parents said, who were total Democrats. They voted for Stevenson, Kennedy, Johnson, straight down the line. They didn't support Goldwater in any way. But they said, well, that's typical of him. He's a very decent person.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what would Johnson have done? And they said, oh, he would have probably gone to the front of the line. So I said, why are you voting for him? He said, because we're not voting for who the nicest guy is.
Right.
We're voting for what they're going to do.
Yeah, I have no mercy for candidates if other people are lying about them and trying to, you know, doing all kinds of dirty tricks. You got to win the election, otherwise you failed in the gladiator in the ring, you know, in the Roman circuits. They're gladiators. There is no such thing as cheating. It doesn't matter. It's who gets the votes or who shows that they won.
But the point is, what I'm saying is, you're not voting for the nicest person or the person with the best haircut or whatever.
Right.
You say, these people are going to be running the country. What are they going to do? Do I support those policies? Is that the direction I want the country to go? That's how people used to do it. They don't do it anymore. You know, I mean, now people are saying, gee, you know, I don't like the way.
A lot of guys are getting in because they're playing to the underprivileged, which is a higher majority, you know, of voters that come out in certain states. You know, the blue states. They're supported by people who are on the downside, below the median average of income and so forth. But they get out the vote, and because the candidates are playing to that. Just like I keep getting these YouTube ads. I don't know if you see them. Did you get your $6,400? Hurry up! You know, the opportunity's going. How can they be giving out $6,400 to, people who are not on Medicaid or or Medicare, who are under 65 and over 25 and earn $50,000 or less than $50,000. That's what it says. Now, maybe it's a scam. I don't know. But
Probably.
but if that's true, the government, it's basically socialism, a degree of socialism. Just anybody gets the money, everybody, anybody. You don't have to have an illness or, anything. You just get the money. Even if you're in jail, you get the money.
Well,
So it's like
look,
redistribution, which may be a good thing. It's kind of like there was a candidate who ran in the 2020 election who was talking about the guaranteed income for everybody. I think they call it ICB or something like that. Everybody gets a guaranteed amount of income, and that puts them on the table. They can play Monopoly. They can go out and rent
right.
a DVD or, buy some sunglasses and try selling them on the side of the road,
Well,
or they can learn maybe they can set up work for Lyft or Uber, so it gives everybody a start. It's not a bad thing because also the money just percolates through the economy.
right.
There's nothing wrong with that. But that's also true when it goes up to a billionaire, as long as the billionaire keeps buying yachts and shit, the money trickles down to some people. If they send it offshore or keep it in the bank or buy gold, it doesn't go anywhere. In fact, the study has shown that money given to people like teachers, if you pick a profession, is much more fluid than if you give it to the weapons industry. If you trace the dollars.
Right. Because the
And
weapons industry, a lot of the money, wherever it goes offshore. Whereas a teacher, where he's not going to be able to, it doesn't have deals going with foreign governments and companies halfway around the world. You're
that's
right.
right.
But there's also something else. I know in Holland, I don't know if they still have it, they had a system where every artist, every person in the arts, who's a qualified artist, obviously, but is supported. They get a minimal salary that will support them. However, if they find them a job, it's like unemployment. If they find them a job, they have to take it. So in other words, if somebody says, yeah, we've got you a job, if you're an actor, and they say, we got you a job, but in this little rinky-dink theater, in a tent somewhere, performing for, kindergarten people, you're on the government salary. So
So they keep getting the same amount of money, but they have to pick up the work.
well, if the work comes through, if they don't have any work for them, they could just sit around, going over their scripts or painting paintings or whatever. But when there's a job for them to do, they have to take it. So it's not like they're just handing out money. It's more like unemployment.
It's when they have civic works. But can they put them in like education?
Yeah, a lot of them. For instance, a lot of actors have to go out and do children's theater. They may not want to do children's theater, but if they're living off the on the government salary, they have to do it.
What
So,
about being speech teachers?
well, it depends upon if they're qualified, I'm sure. I mean, just because you're an actor doesn't mean you're a teacher. But if the teacher, for instance, if they need actors to demonstrate something that a teacher is teaching,
Ah,
that's what they're there for. So,
well, so that it leaves a position in the government for somebody who's creative about how can we utilize our actors and artists to come up with different activities, like
well,
festivals or something,
well,
like
basically,
Renaissance Fair or something. Say,
well,
well,
they don't come up with them, but when there's a need for them, and again, needs come from everywhere. I mean, I do some standardized patient work, which means I use my acting skills to train medical students. Um, they do that for lawyers also, for law schools, medical schools. They use actors to play patients, witnesses, etc. That's another thing where an actor's skills come through. So what I'm trying to
that's
say is
interesting.
that Holland was accused of being this socialist country, or something because they had this system. And I'm saying, wait, and people were saying, oh, they just pay people to sit around. No, they don't pay them to sit around. They pay them to sit around until they find, until they're needed, and then they got to go. Like a soldier, you could say soldiers, just sit around or just go through training or whatever. But when they're needed, they got to go.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just caught. I'm reticent to talk about my past month half because I don't remember it that well. But when I was it's easy for me to distinguish between high school and college because there are no girls in high school. But it was in college musical. I think it was why oh why did I ever leave Ohio? That one. I forget the name of the musical. Why oh why oh why oh why did I ever leave Ohio? I want to wander to whatever. So Tommy Tune was choreographing the performance. And he became a very notable person. I think he was tutored by the guy who did West Side Story.
Jerry Robbins, probably.
I think so. Yeah, it was kind of like that. But he became very notable. But I mean, having him was a blast. He was a blast. He's very good, funny and extreme, and I guess good choreography too.
Right.
So it can be very helpful to have people who have skills, out there doing stuff. I got a friend who's doing he's an actor and producer from England, and he's doing these Zooms meetings of Shakespeare,
right.
And that's going on all over the place.
But the point I was trying to make, to bring it back to the topic so we can get Dennis on again.
Yeah. Oh, Dennis, he's moving.
I know. So we could, but the point I was trying to make is that there's a little socialism in no system is pure anything.
Right.
Anymore. I mean, maybe at the beginning they were, but China is not pure communism anymore. The United States hasn't been pure capitalism since the 30s. So there's a little mix. It's predominantly capitalist. Another country could be predominantly socialist or whatever.
Right.
So when people go to these extreme views, it's one thing or the other. It's all or nothing. I'm going, time to grow up. But anyway, let's try to get Dennis in here.
Okay. Well, I can't shake the chair. Could send him an email. I don't have a phone number. I can't call him.
Oh.
I don't think I have a phone number for him. Let's see.
Well, address him directly.
Dennis. Dennis, I heard something. Hey, Dennis, come on back. Dennis. Hey, Dennis, come on. We need your opinion about something. There we go. We got you. Okay. So let's go back. We were talking about whether or not Colorado has the authority to remove a candidate from a presidential election. Donald Trump or anybody else. What do you think of that?
The answer is yes.
Could you say that again, Dennis?
The answer is yes.
Oh, they have the right.
Yeah.
Okay, what if the state of New Jersey says Biden is not qualified to run for president because he's got dementia? And it gets passed through their court.
About. The 14th Amendment gives them the right to say Trump cannot run for election.
Well, the 25th Amendment allows you to remove a president for incompetence, inability to hold the position.
The 14th Amendment, they allow the 14th Amendment says anybody who who carried on his election to not run for office. And
Wow, this is really funny what they're saying, because they got it saying no person shall be a senator or representative of Congress or elector of president and vice president. That's the elector Congress. That's not the president and vice president. Or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who have previously taken an oath, and blah, blah, blah. But I don't see it being listed historically. When was the 14th
Check
amendment?
around the time of the Civil War, if it was used, but after the Civil War,
Right.
around Reconstruction.
Confederate officials. Here's how it was used. I guess it was originally intended to prevent former Confederate officials from holding any public office during the Reconstruction era of the Civil War. Its application has been limited. One notable instance occurred during the Reconstruction period. Congress used Section 3 to disqualify certain former Confederate officials from serving in federal or state offices. These disqualifications were part of a broader efforts to ensure that those who had participated in the rebellion would not regain political power immediately after the war. In more recent times, the clause gained attention following events of the President Trump. But there was a thing about the Amnesty Act. I have to look that up. Is there such a thing? Here it is. This might be something that nobody's paying attention to. This is very interesting, so I'm going to read this. This is all coming out heavy. It's worth reading. So let me pull it up.
The 1872 Act, the Amnesty Act of 1872, was passed by the 42nd United States Congress. It aimed to reverse the office-holding disqualifications against most of the secessionists who had rebelled during the American Civil War. Notably, it did not apply to senators and representatives of the 36th and 37th Congresses, officers in the judicial, military, and naval service of the United States, heads of departments, and foreign ministers of the United States. President Grant's role. In the spirit of the act, President Ulysses S. Grant issued a proclamation directing district attorneys to dismiss and discontinue proceedings against those who had been disqualified by the 14th Amendment. He also pardoned all but 500 former top Confederate leaders. Here's the key excerpt from the Amnesty Act of 1872. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, 2/3 of each house concurring therein, that all political disabilities imposed by the third section of the 14th Article of Amendments of the Constitution of the United States are hereby removed from all persons whomsoever, except senators and representatives of the 36th and 37th Congresses, officers in the judicial, military, and naval service of the United States, heads of departments, and foreign ministers of the United States.
Okay, you guys still with me? This sounds like the Amnesty Act of 1872. I'm going to read this again. That all political disabilities imposed by the third section of the 14th Article of Amendments of the Constitution of the United States are hereby removed from all persons whomsoever, except, and then they give exceptions. So it is removed from all persons whomsoever, except senators and representatives of the 36th and 37th Congress, officers in the judicial, military, and naval service of the U.S., heads of departments and foreign ministers of the United States. So the Amnesty Act cancels the 14th Amendment, Section 3. I don't know why nobody's talking about that.
Well, the reason they're not
That's
talking
outrageous
about
to
it,
me. You see it on the screen, right? Let me make it bigger.
yes. The reason they're probably not talking about it is that any act, nothing supersedes the Constitution. So if Congress passes a law that's unconstitutional, the Supreme Court, probably have to be brought to the Supreme Court, could say no, that law is against the Constitution, and therefore the law is no good. So no law enacted by Congress, the Congress can, move, as far as I understand it, the Congress can move to, to have a constitutional amendment put in, or a constitutional amendment taken out. But that's a different process. But, just like the beginning of Trump's term, when he tried to put, do some presidential actions, and they were deemed that were, just executive orders, they were deemed unconstitutional. So he couldn't do them. I mean, that's happened to a lot of presidents.
And it's happening to, what's his name, Biden a lot too.
Right. So the fact is that, that happens quite a bit. So when they passed that law, that was obviously because they were easing off Reconstruction, and they were trying to give, to placate the South and allow these people to hold office again and participate in the government of the United States, which they had rebelled against, but now they were in essence giving them amnesty. But the fact is that it's still, it's still a part. It wasn't taken out of the Constitution. So you might say that law was just for those people at that time. So it probably doesn't apply now. Maybe Congress, if they wanted to, could pass a law that would make it applied to now, but I don't think they would do it. We don't have that.
It'll never get through Congress because it's like 50-50 right now. They're not voting, they don't have a consensus on anything, very few.
I think that the main thing is, it seems to me that probably what will happen is the Supreme Court will say this is, that it's not actionable at the present time. In other words, Trump can still run. However, if he is convicted in some manner of having participated or given aid and comfort to the insurrection, or if that's brought out through a legitimate means, meaning a court of law, and then maybe at that point he's automatically off the ballot. Whereas with other states, let's say, I don't know, just Wyoming wanted to say, oh, he's just been convicted. They have to go through the process of removing him from the ballot and it going through court. So basically, they've completed all of the prerequisites to taking him off the ballot if he has been convicted. But I don't think he can be removed from the ballot.
Well, wait a second. Let me ask you a theoretical Twilight Zone question. What if they were successful in Colorado, Oregon, New Jersey, New York, and some other blue states, Wisconsin, Georgia, I don't know, of removing Trump from the ballot in those states, or even just 2 states? But let's say it was 3 or 4. They took him off the ballot. Can't become president. He's not on the ballot. What do you think would happen in this country?
Well,
what would happen?
The fact is that if he was convicted.
No, I don't care for any reason. He was absolutely convicted. He tried to reverse the election. They're not going to prove that he didn't think it was a fake election. But let's say that's not the issue. The issue is, it doesn't matter what you tell the public at this point because of the lies that were put out about COVID and Hunter Biden and a couple of other things. But you can't rely on what the media says. You can't rely on what the government says. The NASA thing, not NASA, the NRA, oh, no, we don't tap phones. No, we never would do that. Okay, yeah, we do that, but we don't open up the emails. We never open up we open up the emails only when we have to, and not for too long. Well, whenever we want. There's
That's the NSA, not the NRA. They're two different things.
Yeah, not the NRA, whatever what is it called?
The NSA, yeah.
NSA, right. And, so lie, or, fudge. We're doing it for your own good. You should wear these masks. They don't do anything, but a lot of people's income depends on selling those masks, so on and so forth. So it doesn't matter. You could have witnesses. You could have Donald Trump come out and say, of course I tried to reverse the election. Look what the fuck Joe Biden did with the borders and so forth. It doesn't matter. The point of saying is, if the government prevents the public from voting for him in 2 or 3 states, what do you think would happen in the country? What would be the social reaction?
So if you're saying if the Supreme Court rules,
yeah,
that could stand.
That states have the ability to remove candidates from a federal election due to a violation of the 14th Amendment.
Well, you know something, I'll tell you this much. Let's say he's convicted,
yeah,
and they do remove him, and most of his supporters aren't going to care. So what's going to happen in this country? What's going to happen is it's going to be a big test, maybe a very bloody one also, on whether the United States of America is going to survive from that point.
Right. The other point of it is this. What if the election comes down to, if he had Colorado, he would have won. But he didn't have Colorado, so he lost.
If my guess, again, we have to see, is that the Supreme Court's going to overturn this until he's convicted. Now, if he's convicted, I seriously doubt that Colorado is going to be the only state that takes him off the ballot.
Right. So let's say he's taken off of 6 states. What's going to happen?
What's going to happen is he'll be taken off 6 states, and he loses the election. And people are going to say, oh, if it wasn't for those 6 states and everything, and you're going to have people who are going to say the opposite of what I'm saying right now, what I've been saying, which is that I'd love him to be off the ballot in 49 states, but it's not the right thing. It's probably not going to work. It doesn't go according to the Constitution at the present time, to the way this country works. So if they're going to turn around and say, we don't care how the country works, we don't care what it's built on, we don't care about the Constitution, we want our own way, then you have something very similar to 1861. Because people are just going to say, then they are basically saying, we don't want the United States of America. So,
well, that's your viewpoint. They would say, we want to get back the United States of America and get these assholes out of here, these crooks and thieves.
Well, it's not just my viewpoint. It's the idea.
I don't think that they want another. The only people who want another government are the commies. The right-wing militia. They don't want fascism. They want American.
Well, wait a second. Hold it. Look at the right wing and tell me that if Trump was elected and he declared himself, you know something, I'm going to be a bit of a dictator here, and you got me for life.
Who's that?
Let's say Trump said it. Could be anybody who gets it, but a right-winger.
Like FDR.
What?
FDR.
Well, FDR did have it for life, in essence. That's why they put that law in.
Right.
That you can only have 2 terms. But he said, I'm taking over, and you know what? I'm going to increase executive power because I want to do what I want to do. You think the right wing is going to say, no, you can't do that because that's not the way this country works? Of course. When you've got extremists, it doesn't matter what side they're on. Their agenda is more important than any country race, religion, whatever,
Right.
want their agenda in, be it the far right or, as we're starting to see, elements in the far left. So the fact is, people have to decide. We have a country which has a constitution. Really, the only glue that's holding this country together is the Constitution. And, and obviously.
Oh, I don't know. No. Okay. But all right. I'm sorry for saying that. Go ahead.
No. The only thing that's holding this, and I'm not talking about, we would still have a country, but it wouldn't be the United States of America. The thing that really identifies us is basically the Constitution. You could throw in the Declaration of Independence or whatever, the principles upon which we stand. But the fact is that people say we don't want the Constitution, and they don't want the United States of America. There could be a country here. They could call it the United States of America. They could call it whatever they want. But the fact is, it won't be the country that they pledged allegiance to when they were in second grade. It won't be the country that they were raised in. That it won't be the United States of America as the United States of America was designed to be. It will be another country. However, I think there would be a massive, what happened on January 6th would be a blip compared to what would happen after that. However, people have to decide. It's just like when there's the idea is the peaceful transfer of power. Yeah, you could say the election was fixed. There are people who still say Gore should have been the president of the United
That's
States.
right. That's right.
The fact is, you could just get down and say, suck it up. Okay? You could say we don't want this to happen again. But you don't sit there and say, no, we're going to destroy this country if we can't get it back that way. Come on. Give me a break. I understand the logic why Trump's doing it, because he needs to stay out of jail. Okay?
Yeah, it's a way of him staying out of jail.
Right. But there's a bunch of other people out there who are saying, no, we want, and I've spoken to many of them. No, we want it our way, even if it goes against the United States of America. They have things that are higher priorities. And that's the way they want it, and that's it.
Mostly people who are associated with other countries.
Look,
the ones you know.
Well,
they want the U.S. to help X country or Y's country or something.
Right. There's
why isn't the U.S. doing this and that to help other countries?
Look, I think they said 20% of whatever it was, 18 to 34-year-olds or something, aren't sure or have doubts that the Holocaust happened.
Oh.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about people who necessarily live out on farms in the middle of nowhere, as might have been the case in the 1930s or something. We're talking about this society where there is where the internet is now, instead of giving us more information, has given us more disinformation. And now we have a serious situation where people don't even agree on what truth is. They can't even agree on whether or not something is true. There are still flat earthers out there. So the fact is, what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't have a lot of hope. I'm a little cynical about this. I think the whole goddamn world is falling apart. But,
well, just try to remember that any deficiency with humanity is because it's composed of human beings, Yeah,
it was always the flaw in that. Yeah.
That's the flaw. It's just human beings. You can't, if they get an opportunity, they're going to go jerk off in the corner,
Right.
Human beings. So I've just found this poll shocker. 20% of Gen Z think Holocaust is a myth.
Right.
28% believe Jews have too much power in the U.S. And 48% believe that Jews are the best comics. No, I made that up.
Would be the only ray of hope there.
But anyhow, that's kind of like shocking. I know.
And by the
Well,
way,
you know, by the way, 20% of the Gen X thinks they're not heterosexual. You
they're
know,
not
there's
what?
something else, heterosexual. They're
Oh, well,
not straight men or women. They're some kind of deviation of a non-standard thing.
yeah, it's
It's a big increase from like 2% to 25% or 20%. But anyhow, yeah, and here you go with the Holocaust. What the hell? How many movies they got to see? They didn't see these movies? You know,
they don't,
Schindler's List or
it doesn't
even
matter.
Bastards thing.
The internet allows you to pick and choose what facts you want to believe. You can pick
Yeah.
it. You can say, I like that one. There's no agreement. We used to have Walter Cronkite giving the news, or Eric Severide or something like that. We used to have these people that would give the news, 3 different channels on the air. Pretty much when something happened, it was pretty much the same thing because they would at least attempt to be as objective as possible. Gone.
Oh, well, you think that was a golden age of objective, truthful reporting?
No, there never was total objectivity,
Right.
obviously.
You think
But
it flipped in 63 when Kennedy got shot?
Yeah, the idea is, well, look, I remember, and I saw it again, that they have the entire ton, probably in the archive. They have the entire tape of Walter Cronkite's broadcast
Uh-huh.
on November 22nd, 1963.
Yeah.
He was giving the news, and then he said, we have a report came in that President Kennedy was shot, blah, blah. He gave all the information. Then he paused. First time in his history of broadcasting. He paused for a second, took his glasses off, wiped his face, and went back on and reported the news. That was because his job was to get the information out, at least as they knew it at that time.
Yeah.
And I think Dennis has something to say.
Yes, Dennis.
The Colorado Supreme Court had every right to deny the fact that Donald Trump should run for election based on the 15th Amendment. Unfortunate amendment. I agree with that. And probably the Supreme Court of the United States, with all the right wingers on it, will overturn that decision. But right now, Trump is ineligible to run for election, especially for president of the United States. So I will leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So there's a related issue to me,
hold it.
which go ahead.
One thing, Ken, actually, that was an important thing that Dennis just said, because as of now, he is ineligible to run until it goes to the Supreme Court. So if for some reason the Supreme Court doesn't hear it right away, during that time, he is ineligible to run, because that is the only judicial decision that's been made.
No, I think the decision was, as you stated it dependent upon his conviction.
Oh, it was? Is that what the
I think
decision-
so. I think I saw something like that. Yeah. That it can't be enforced until they finish the trial, which they're going to start again in March, something like that.
Right. Well, if that's the case, then it may not be overturned. Then actually, it's the flip side, that if he's convicted, yeah, it is totally constitutional what they did.
Uh-huh.
If he's convicted. But
Well,
so-
but except for this, that the part of the judicial system is the appeals.
Yeah, no, he can appeal it. I'm just saying that, however, as it stands, if he's convicted of aiding and abetting an insurrection of the United States, according to the 14th Amendment, he can be denied a place on the ballot.
Uh-huh.
So that would be However, a funny thing I wanted to add to that, just a side note, which is that when I was out in Colorado, I did notice one thing. It's kind of a purple state now, to a large
What was
degree.
it before?
I think it was a red state for that. Well,
Oh, well, a lot of people from the coast, let's say from the West Coast, move over there because they were upset with conditions in San Francisco and LA. And they, those red states are go like, no, we don't want you here. If you're going to come here and start doing, drag queen library story times and bring that West Coast stuff over here, we don't want it. I know I ran into that when I was in North Dakota once. Guy says, oh, you're from LA. All those weird assholes.
Right. There is that attitude, but it has changed. I mean, it's gotten a little purplish. So actually, if he was, in other words, if Trump's the candidate, I don't know if he would have, it'd be an uphill battle, I think. The odds are he would not win Colorado. If another Republican were the candidate, let's say a more moderate Republican, they would have a better chance, I think, of taking Colorado. If it was, when I say more moderate, I mean, if it's somebody who is more legit, more legal, shall we say, Nikki Haley or Chris Christie or somebody like that, I think they would have a better chance of taking Colorado in a national election than Donald Trump at this point. So, that's why I said before, not really a matter of partisanship. Partisanship may play much less of a role in this situation, but we will see. And by the way, I just wanted to throw another interesting point in. George Santos's seat, which is going to be decided in a special election on who's going to take it over. The Democrats put in a candidate who was decidedly not left-leaning. He's a Democrat, but he's closer to being a conservative Democrat. And the Republicans put in a candidate. The Republican candidate is actually a member of the Democratic Party. She's a registered Democrat. Did you hear about this?
No.
She is 44 years old. She's an Ethiopian Jew who emigrated when she was 12 years old to Israel, served as a paratrooper in the IDF, then married a Ukrainian Jewish doctor. They moved to the United States, and then she's like, the Republicans asked her to run, but talk about as far as optics go.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Is she a lesbian?
No.
Oh, she doesn't have a chance.
But she's got 7 kids, so that appeals to the other side. And the fact is, and she's a vice president, a very popular vice president of her synagogue, and very active in civil rights, in very active in fighting for things, for the Black community. So she's very active in Black and Jewish issues. I got to tell you something. The Nassau County Republicans, they finally did something smart. I mean, that's going to be a tough one. How is he going to attack her?
Yeah. Well, you could go with that. I don't know.
It's
you say the other guy is a moderate Democrat.
Yeah, who had a lot of legal issues. There was a lot of things involving insider trading, but he's a member of the Democratic Party machine in Queens, the Queens Democratic Party machine. So they picked. So,
and this woman, is she moving over to the Republican Party, or
she was a registered Democrat, but they asked her to run for the Nassau County Legislature, the county legislature, and she won as a Republican, even though she was a registered Democrat. So obviously she's got,
what's her name? Do you know her name?
I forgot her name. It's an Ethiopian Jewish name.
But it's in Nassau County, huh?
The district is I think it's part of Queens and part of Nassau. And it's a community that has a large Jewish population.
Oh.
including now a Middle Eastern, Iranian Jewish population, and that in the past has been very liberal, very positive and progressive on civil rights issues.
Okay. I think she's going to win. She's got a good smile.
Oh, you see her?
Yeah. She's a black woman with long hair.
Mm-hmm.
She looks like she's 30, 25 to 30. She's not pretty, but she's good looking.
I thought she was pretty, and
she's good looking. In other words, she doesn't have an enormous nose or something. She looks like a nice person.
Yeah.
I mean, she's not sexy, and she's got a great smile, which means that's got to have value. People are sick of the sour pusses. So I think she could win. I think she will win.
Well, the only thing is,
well, you can look her up. Her name is Mazi Melesa Pilip. Mazi Melesa Pilip.
Yeah.
To run for special election to replace George Santos. Yeah, I don't know why they had a problem with the guy. He just lies like every other politician, but okay. So she looks good. Maybe maybe if she wins that thing, Trump will take her as a vice president.
I got to tell you something. The MAGA Republicans in the House are going to have a real problem because she is, from what I've heard, I can't say this for a fact. Maybe she changed. She is far from a MAGA Republican. I mean, she's a more, would be called what we used to call a liberal Republican. So, and there's, again, they can't attack her because she's
got a wonderful record. This is, I mean, the woman that woman from the Midwest who they elected as on the Supreme Court. She has 7 kids and she says this and that and, got degrees. She's a real producer. That history you told me is amazing,
Yeah. She's very pro-Israel and very progressive on issues facing African Americans, people of color, and very pro-Israel. What they used to call she seems to me, from what I've heard, again, I'm not absolutely sure because there's not a lot written about her, but from what I've gleaned, she seems to be what we used to call the old-fashioned liberal. Mario Cuomo type of liberal.
Believes in the sanctity of sovereignty of the individual.
Sovereignty of the individual, and also, but very liberal on civil rights issues and something like that, and very pro-Israel.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned liberal from the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or whatever. So it's going to be hard certainly for the Republicans to attack other Republicans to attack her. But what are the Democrats going to do? I mean, their candidate, she may actually be more liberal than their own candidate. I don't know. Again, I'm talking out of my hat here a little bit because
that's interesting. I haven't seen it. It hasn't come over in the mainstream media that I've seen. This is a very unusual election.
Yeah.
To have her, not because it's replacing Santos, but because of the way you described the 2 main candidates.
Yeah.
She's a phenomenon. She's what everybody wants. A person who is bipartisan. Doesn't matter if she's Republican or Democrat. She stands for certain principles.
Right. It's going to be the only thing the Democrats really have going for them is that people may be so soured on the Republicans because of George Santos from that district, at least. They may have feel that the Republicans lied to them so bad that they won't be able to bring themselves to fill out.
Yeah, but they got her to win. The Republicans got her to win an elected seat where they had to run against the Democratic candidate, right? You said she won an election. You there? Did I lose you? Hey, I think I lost you, my friend. No, I see you there, but I can't hear you. You got it. Your mic is off. There we go. She won a position already, didn't she? Mike?
What?
She's
Yeah.
already elected to something.
Yeah, she's elected to the Nassau County House of Representatives or Legislature or something.
Didn't she run against a Democrat?
Yes, and she won.
So,
And it was a Democrat, normally a Democratic seat. So yeah, no, she can do it. It'll be interesting because if she's elected to the House of Representatives, the Republicans will need her vote. So she basically is going to have a lot of pull, and it's not going to be in the direction that the far right wants it to be. So it's going to be really, it'd be really interesting. It's just an interesting situation politically.
I think so, yeah. And the other thing, in terms of her appearance, I know you can't, I don't know if you can go look her up. But the thing is, I mean, she's not a fat black woman. She's not like the woman who was running for the governor of Georgia.
No, Stacey Abrams.
Stacey Abrams, right. You know, it's just not a pleasant viewpoint. You know,
well, she's more like, yeah, she's more urbane looking. She's from the, she's in the New York area. She's I think she's 44 years old. She looks like she's 30 something.
Yeah.
And I think she's attractive, but that will present a good appearance on the outside. But also remember, she's married to a Ukrainian Jew. So she's got the pro-Israel and pro-Ukraine thing going for her. But she's also progressive on, civil rights and things like that.
Probably, against the elimination of abortion rights,
women's rights, and everything like that. She's like what you would normally expect somebody from the North Shore of Long Island to be like. And she's more like what George Santos wanted to present himself as.
Right.
What he lied saying he was. So basically, unless we find out, hey, she's none of those things. But no, I think, but it's just funny that the Republican Party was being very smart as far as the optics go. I mean, just being who she is, her own backstory, it's going to be, it's a hard one to beat in that district of Long Island, where it's, has a lot of what used to be known as, is I don't know if it's more than 50% Jewish, but it's heavily Jewish, and it used to be an entrenched bastion of liberalism, in at least the old-fashioned form. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation. I just thought I'd bring it up.
Okay, so I want to do one last thing, and then I think we can call it jumping to a totally different topic.
2020, contractor Devon Henry and his team accepted a project unlike any other they had ever been tasked to do, removing Confederate statues across the state of Virginia. And it was a job that everyone else contacted by the state turned down.
ABC's Ike Ajachi traveled to an undisclosed location in Richmond to see where all the statues now reside.
Where are we right now? Where all of the stone and statues are residing.
Welcome to the Boneyard. It's what Devon Henry calls the resting place for dozens of pieces of old Confederate monuments.
What you're looking at is probably over 1,500 pieces of granite stone from the pedestals.
Henry, who was the contractor behind the removal of these Confederate statues, says it was one of the hardest tasks he's ever been responsible for. He got through the work leaning into the lessons learned early on from his mother, who gave birth to Henry at the age of 15.
She decided that, hey, I'm going to take care of my child. The way that she was going to do that was working at McDonald's. She got to a position where she owned 5 McDonald's in the Richmond area.
Henry was the first in his family to graduate college, working at General Electric before switching gears in 2006, buying his contracting company, which he named Team Henry Enterprises. He initially specialized in erosion and sediment control until he says a seminal moment in the summer of 2017 changed everything.
That's where they had the Unite the Right protest, and what that protest was about was the statues.
On August 12, 2017, alt-right groups were marching in the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia for a Unite the Right rally. It turned deadly when a 20-year-old Ohio man rammed his car into a crowd of protesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer and injuring 19 others. According to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, there were 405 domestic terror attacks or plots in the U.S. from 2015 through 2020. That's more than double the total number in the previous decade.
The folks in the community, they want to be heard. And what they were saying was, hey, we want these statues down.
On June 3rd, 2020, Devon received a call like no other from Clark Mercer, the former chief of staff to Governor Ralph Northam, to take on the ultimate job, forever changing his life.
He said, we want to take down the Robert E. Lee statue.
But before Henry said yes, the state said over 20 white contractors said no.
I was disappointed but not surprised. There was a lot of pushback against the move to take it down. A lot of personal attacks against the governor, but it was the right thing to do.
A legal dispute delayed the removal of the state-owned Robert E. Lee statue for over a year. In the meantime, the city of Richmond decided it was time to remove its own monuments.
What was the process like to securing the equipment needed to actually do the job?
You need a crane. And not just the baby crane. We called everybody in Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania. The folks that eventually told us yes were out of Connecticut. The Stonewall Jackson was the first one. So it literally took us about 4.5, 5 hours to get that thing off the pedestal. And when we did, it was an amazing moment. Once that happened, it was a free fall of death threats.
I hope you're proud of yourself. You know, I don't know what you're trying to do.
And why'd you keep going?
Because it had to be done.
After over a year of legal battles, the decision was made. It was time for the 21-foot tall Lee to come down.
And there's a scene at that moment where your mother and you embrace.
You got this quote in your head, when the black man put up the statue, and when the time comes, it'll be a black man who takes it down. I thought about all that she went through, and she just hugged, we embraced. She said, you did it. You did it.
What a moment in history. We're joined now by Ike Ajachi, and what a story. So he was the only one that agreed to do it throughout the entire state. All of the white-owned construction business owners said no. What was that like for him?
Well, you know what? He told me that he wasn't surprised, but at the same time, he said that he was encouraged. Now, you saw that John Mitchell quote at the end. I spoke with him for several hours, and he kept repeating that quote. It was the black man who put up those statues. It's going to be a black man who takes it down. I'm paraphrasing that right there. But he internalized that quote, and it was essentially the fuel that made him keep going through all the threats, through all the backlash. He knew in his heart that it was the right thing to do.
I mean, even trying to find the equipment to do it wasn't easy. We can see in your story all the pieces of stone that are sitting in that graveyard. What happens to those pedestals and those statues now?
Well, he calls it the boneyard, but it's essentially what it sounds like, a graveyard. That's the final resting place for those stones. They're not going to leave there. They're going to stay right there. But as you saw, there's over 1,500 pieces. On every single piece, there's a little metal placard that Devon put there. And essentially what it says on that is what this piece of stone came from and where it came from, meaning what Confederate monument it was part of, things of that nature. And he said any museum can actually call him and take those pieces out if they want to. Now, as for the actual statues, that Robert E. Lee statue, that's actually owned by the Black History Museum of Richmond. They actually own that now. They called him, they got it. But they're keeping it there for right now, just like the rest of the statues. What they're going to do with it afterward, well, that's a story for another day.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Okay, now I'm going to stop that, and I've got to share it's one other thing, because the real news article that I wanted to talk about was they're taking down a statue from Arlington Cemetary, which is in Washington, D.C. And okay, let me get that. There we go. And so I can go back and share this. If I can get to my, there we go. Share and do this again. Share. Just going to show you this. Here it is. This is a Confederate statue in Arlington Cemetery that there was an injunction to removing it, and then another judge allowed the removal. And that's the thing. And this is a big statue in Arlington Cemetery, which is the nation's military cemetery, I believe. Arlington National Cemetery, amid protests. They're removing a statue, whatever it is. And judge allows a Confederate memorial, removal of the Confederate statue. Let's see what this says. In Northern Virginia, it was halted amid a temporary restraining order submitted by protesting groups. And whatever the statue stands for, they're taking it down. So my question on that was, I was curious about your reaction to that, because it's an imposition. There's a segment of the country, let's say it's only 20%, that wants, that believes in something. It's almost a religious belief. And they're not in the majority. They can't even maintain, they can't stop this from happening. They tried. Do they have a right to have that? So like Germany outlawed the Nazi party. We haven't. You could still have a Nazi party in America as long as it's not attacking America or trying to have a revolution, overturn the government. In fact, there's U.S. Communist Party in a guy who has a radio program in L.A., and it's the leader of it, Bob Avakian, says we're going to have a revolution, but it's going to be a peaceful revolution. It's not going to be by force. Because if he said it was going to be by force, then that's insurrection or that's actionable, but not if it's just by talking people into it. But in any event, so here's this. In other words, removing the statute it's intended to emasculate the Confederate movement or any militia or any white supremacist group that still holds that, cherishes that, or has it as an iconic point of support. Is that appropriate? Does that work in the long run? Should we, how far should we go with that, with other things? There can be no iconic statutes or principles unless they're approved by the U.S. government. So I don't know where you go with that. Dennis, what do you think? Should we get rid of all the statues?
Yes, I agree with them.
Okay. Just like that. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree with Dennis agreeing with them. First of all, as the guy said, he gave it to the museum that bought it, but the one who removed all the other statues said, if a museum wants to take them, they can. If a particular place wants to take them, they were removed from federal, state, or locally local government lands. And Arlington National Cemetery is a national cemetery. It's inappropriate for something to the Confederacy, which was an insurrection against the United States, to have a memorial to it. You do allow the Nazi Party. You do allow other parties, horrific political parties to have their say in the United States, whereas they wouldn't in Germany. However, not on federal lands, not in federal institutions. Okay, you can't put up you can't hang a swastika from the Capitol building. And so the Confederacy was an insurrection against the United States. It's inappropriate for it to be represented in in Arlington National Cemetery. By the way, one other comment I'll make is that guy who, his mother's story is amazing also. She
Right, the five McDonald's.
to owning 5 of them. Yeah, that's incredible.
It's like,
man.
wow. what was I doing with my life? Jesus
Right,
Christ.
exactly. Yeah. But the idea is that, he was getting these death threats about removing the monuments. That just shows you how stupid the people making the death threats were, because he could have said, hey, you keep on sending me these death threats. Cranes, accidents can happen with cranes. We could drop things and they could break into 100 pieces. So, count your blessings before you shoot your mouth off. But anyway, no, I think the appropriate thing was done. That was it. The whole thing about putting these statues up was a way of trying to placate the South, just like when they removed Reconstruction. And part of that placating was, of course, allowing Jim Crow laws to stand for many years, far past Reconstruction, allowing horrible. The Ku Klux Klan. So no, I think it's and I'm not saying that putting a statue of Robert E. Lee is the same thing as lynching somebody. That there are certain degrees here, but the fact is that it didn't belong there. They don't belong in federal buildings. It could be in a museum, in a private museum, in a private institution, in a private park. I think they were going to take, somebody had a private park and they wanted to take all the statues. Fine. But no, my feeling is this was all, the correct thing to do. If you like Robert E. Lee, get the statue, get some money together, get some people together, get the statue, put it at your house, or buy a building where you have your own private little, private little park or whatever, put it in there. It's, I don't know. I'm just talking about appropriateness or something. I like Natalie Wood. I don't think that we should have a statue for her, in the middle of the White House. And by the way, she wasn't part of an insurrection. So I think it was appropriate.
Right. Well, the thing is, I think it's comparable to the the names of things. What we did with Germany and Japan. The what's the name of that plan? That the general for restoring Germany.
Were you talking about denazification?
Well, no, the whole thing of rebuilding the country.
The Marshall Plan?
The Marshall Plan, right?
That was to rebuild Europe, yeah.
Yeah, so we're not going to punish them. Maybe we should have. They started 2 wars, but they weren't emasculated. They tried to say, well, these are the people who did this are criminals. That's right, but that's not all of Germany. It's not Germans who are guilty. It's Nazis. So we're going to, do this, and we're going to reestablish Germany and then put you back into where you're the head of the EU. You're going to have your and they particularly, it's not general knowledge, but they allowed a lot of Nazis to return to their political point, sheriffs, mayors, and stuff, so that it wasn't just chaos and anarchy. They wanted to keep order. And the same thing in Japan. They just made certain agreements. Not that many people were prosecuted. So looking up on, 1 second. So looking up on, it took me to Wikipedia, and there's a whole history. There were Confederate soldiers buried there. It was an act of, not an act of Congress. The Confederate Memorial, it's called, was authorized in 1906 and commissioned by blah, blah, blah. And in 1914, President Wilson, on the 106th anniversary of the birth of Jefferson Davis, I guess he memorialized it or unveiled it in 1914. So it was, and there were some soldiers initially buried there And sometimes they were prisoners of war, Confederate prisoners, Union prisoners. The Union had Confederates in jail. And or sometimes they couldn't identify who the dead bodies were at a battlefield, but they buried some. So it's a question of having respect, not trying to keep your thumb over, to bring them back into the Union, bring these states back into the Union. Don't feel that you're forever not part of the United States. I was coincidentally just last week in the East Coast, in South Carolina and Georgia and Alabama, right, 3 states. And it's the South, and they're Americans, and it's a culture. And they eat hush puppies, or they get grits, or whatever. It's a different style. It's very similar to anywhere else. There's rich and poor, and all of the same chain stores, and all of the same affectations of wealth, and what's good. It's not like visiting Quakers or some extreme monastery or a motorcycle gang or anything like that. They're just Americans, just wearing the same clothes and everything. So you want to have them back in the Union, but able to still, like a New Yorker, right? New Yorker, hey, what are you? Hey, that's New York. They bark at you. And my favorite knock joke, knock knock, who's there? None of your fucking business. That's that. It's a New York attitude thing. Doesn't mean everybody has to follow it, but it's famous. The New York waitress. How you doing, sweetheart? You'll eat that, and I'll bring you something else, maybe. Attitude. So the South has their attitude. Very charming, Southern belles, and very friendly people, and so forth. A lot more, maybe more attention to sports. I know a tremendous recruitment place for the U.S. Army is from Alabama and other southern states. Supplies probably 40% of the U.S. Army candidates. So it's got its own local culture. So I feel that a belligerent removal of anything that denotes history also has a negative effect of removing that topic from history. It makes the Confederate, the Civil War go the way of Holocaust, so that the next generation of children will say, what Civil War? What are you talking about? Confederate States of America. Come on, that's just a Walt Disney movie. That didn't happen. There was no Civil War.
But Ken,
so I'll stop talking now. I'm just saying there's a consideration for accommodation and mediation and getting back together. It's like if there was an argument in the family because somebody, stole the property or wrecked a car. All right. Well, let's make it up. Everybody's feelings were hurt. There was a lot of damage. Well, let's get together.
Well, yeah, but I mean, nobody's saying there can't be a museum for the Confederacy. There can't be. We're talking about in lands that are dedicated, lands that are specifically related to the government of the United States, or administered by the government of the United States. Nobody's saying we're going to dig up those Confederate soldiers out of Arlington and take them out of there.
They may next month. They may go that way.
I don't think so. I mean, the fact is that it's a federal land, and the Civil War was an insurrection. It was different than, let's say, if you buried a British soldier from the American Revolution, which I'm sure there's none of buried there in Arlington. Well, obviously, because Arlington wasn't there at the time. But the idea is that, the Civil War was an insurrection against the United States government. It wasn't like First Nations people saying you're taking our land or something like that.
Well, I disagree. It was a secession. They wanted to separate from the United States of America, just like North Sudan and South Sudan, and various other countries around the world, like Barcelona wants to separate from Spain.
That's an insurrection, though, because they had agreed to be part of the United States of America. and now let's say they were going back on their contract.
Yes. Yeah,
so-
but it's a section. They weren't trying to conquer or overthrow the northern government. They weren't
True.
invading the North.
Well, they did attempt to invade the North, but that was after the war began.
Yeah.
No, they weren't trying to take the North for themselves. You're right about that. On the other hand, they were trying to be, they had agreed to be part of the United States.
Yeah.
And the,
No, I mean, Lincoln made the case. It's like, we can't survive like this. What's
Right.
going to happen next? If we let them break the country up like that, then any state that feels it's doing better than the other states is going to want to secede. There's political movements like that for the Northwest. They want to, Oregon, Washington, and I don't know what else, want to break off.
and remember, the South also wanted the new states coming into the Union to be slave states.
Yeah.
In other words, they weren't even just saying, "Oh, we'll be slave." Everybody, we want to just keep our slavery, which to me was repulsive enough. But the fact is, they wanted to expand slavery. So was no, I think, look, the statue's got to go from those places. If you have a historical park or a section that's devoted to the history of something, that's not a memorial but a historical area or something, and there are historical parks all over the world, and there are obviously museums, then yes, you can have those statues. Then yes, people must know that about history and everything like that. But when you're talking about commemorating it and raising it to the level of quote unquote heroism, no, inappropriate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, no. You can have. It's a question of, is it a question of personal preference, or is it being done because it's offensive to slaves or ex-slaves or people who look like slaves?
Well, slavery obviously is now forbidden in the United States. So
yeah, more or less.
Well, it
Yeah,
is
look, the radical left is going to, prison, slavery, and so forth.
Well, no, I'm talking about the actual owning. In other words,
Yeah.
Owning of another human being.
Yeah.
You can say, oh, it's when they're saying that the prisons are like slavery, they're saying it's like slavery, but it don't diminish the institution, if I can call it that, of slavery. Don't diminish the evil of that by saying, oh, everything's like slavery. It's the same thing they do.
Right. That's
say,
right.
oh, this is just like the Holocaust. 4 people were killed. It's another Holocaust. No, not quite. But the fact is that slavery, anything that celebrates slavery or celebrates somebody who celebrated slavery or embodied it, is now against the Constitution of the United States. So, there's really nothing, as far as saying, oh, we're going to hold on to your history. Well, guess what? The United States has a checkered history. Most countries have checkered histories. You can't say, oh, I'm going to hold on to my piece of it, even if it was wrong. Hey, we got to accept the fact that as a country, we did a lot wrong as well as a lot right. But what the ideal is and what we're supposed to be striving for is what is the good part. That should remain good. So I don't know. I'd say, nah, forget the statues and everything like that. People are, the media in Hollywood has been complicit in this, trying to paint the heroic South and everything. And we needed to do it during the First and Second World Wars so that these guys would want to join the army. But let's face it, okay? The South, one of the basic things the South was fighting for was to maintain slavery. Those are not the good guys. Okay? It doesn't mean everybody fighting for the South was doing that, because most people in the South did not have slaves. They had they couldn't afford them. But the fact is, you could also say a lot of people in the Wehrmacht had nothing against Jews. They weren't Nazis, but they were Germans. So they were fighting for Germany. Yeah, that's true. But if you're on the wrong side, you're on the wrong side. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to be butchered or tortured or murdered or whatever, but it does mean, you're not going to become heroes. It always reminds me of something somebody said that my family, a friend of the family had been in the Wehrmacht during World War II. He was a client of my father's. And somebody confronted him and said, "How could you do that?" He said, you must have known about the concentration camps. He said, "Yeah, we didn't know the extent of it, but we knew they were bad. They were horrible things. Yeah, we knew about it." She said, "Why didn't you do something?" He said, "Well, we didn't want to get sent to a concentration camp." She said, "You were cowards then." He said, "Yes, we were not heroes. We don't celebrate." He says, "I don't celebrate the fact that I fought for Germany in World War II. I was on the wrong side." That's the attitude.
Okay, great. Okay, good. I got to read this. I looked it up. This is the inscription on the memorial that they took down. And this explains what I was trying to talk about. The inscription is not for fame or reward, not for place or for rank, not lured by ambition or goaded by necessity, but in simple obedience to duty as they understood it. These men suffered all, sacrificed all, dared all, and died. And then the phrase, the commentary in the article is, the inscription expresses the Confederate view of the Civil War as a struggle for principle and honor rather than slavery or secession. It also reflects the reconciliist sentiment that prevailed in the early 20th century when the memorial was erected, which sought to heal the wounds of the war and emphasize the valor of both sides.
Okay.
So, okay, all right, the war's over. Let's be friends. Come on, I want to go visit. I want to go down to Florida and Tennessee and, Texas. And I like chain dancing, whatever they call it. I like the Cajun food and, we have cultures, and you come on up to New York and take a look,
Sure.
So I think there are people in this and that. So it's a question of, I would think the question is, can the Southerners look at a Confederate memorial and say, gee, that was really a waste of life, just like any other war. I'm glad that we stopped that. And slavery was a bad thing. And as opposed to having it be something that endorses, like to burn dead coals of antagonism, but rather to say, there you go. Well, this is it. Oh, it's like with Columbus. Columbus did this, that, and the other thing. Take down the statue. Fuck him. Come on. It's ridiculous. Columbus has, whatever happened, he turned into a symbol of courage and curiosity, and the courage to go across an ocean, not knowing if he's going to fall off the edge of the planet, or maybe he knew, but, not knowing, taking a dare, being an explorer, yes, and this and that, and he fucked this one and killed that one. Okay. And then he had slaves and so forth. So did everybody else and so forth. But I mean, to take it down and say, no, I only want statues of Puerto Rican heroes. Okay. Well, give me the Puerto Rican heroes and we'll put the statues up. Right now, these are the heroes of our civilization. And there's no need to eliminate them and just put up hip hop artists as icons of somebody to look up to.
Well, I don't think that's why they were removed, though, Ken.
Why? That's not why they were removed? Well,
no, I mean, that there were people calling for their removal based on that argument. But I think the reason they were removed is because they were arguing, and they had fought for against the United States for something that was finally made, illegal in the United States. which was slavery, and that they don't belong there anymore. Look, somebody could put up a statue of George Patton, who did fight on the right side, but George Patton was a miserable human being. First of all, I think he was an overrated general also, but he was also a racist, anti-Semite, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? But he happened to be on the right side. So if they put up a statue, you know, he fought, he won many, not as many as Hollywood or populist historians would say. He didn't win, he wasn't as great, nearly as great a general as they say, but he did do some things. He won some victories. He fought for the cause. So they want to put up a memorial to him, you know, a statue to him in a World War II memorial or something. Yeah, he did his job. He may not be a great example of our side, but so there may have been Confederate generals that were not pro-slavery or something like that, but they were fighting for the wrong side. That's all. I don't know. I think the statue thing has become really, I mean, statues aren't.
Right now it's passe. And right now it's sort of like it's a done deal.
It's right.
They've removed the statues. You know, I mean, I did see a report once that a majority of all those Confederate statues were put up after 1920. I mean, they're recent. Right. They're not like from old 1800s.
Right.
You know, so they were done by, you know, let's say, not civil rights, you know, like militia groups or something, white supremacists. Yeah. So, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm just cautious that they want, you know, Superman was gay, you know.
Well,
Batman was a pedophile, you know. There's nobody. You can't have no heroes. No hero for you today.
Well, that's also garbage. In other words, you don't start changing who they were.
Right.
You know, it's, I mean, I know somebody wanted to say, somebody was saying Abe Lincoln was gay because he once slept in a bed, you know, a large bed that other men were sleeping in, which is how people had to do it. You know, you were sitting there was a rainstorm or something, you're traveling cross country, you go into a barn and you're sleeping on the straw and there's 18 other guys. People do that in the army. They're totally straight. But people were saying, oh, that must mean he was gay. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, they have a problem with that. Say, well, what's wrong with that? You know, this thing these days, it's no longer considered, you know, maybe it's considered by some percentage, but so anyhow, you know, yeah, okay, all right, okay. I thought it was an interesting thing and it's going on and doesn't get much news. But the thing that you brought up tonight, I'm really surprised. I haven't heard of that before about that lady running as a Republican. That's really shattering. That's really significant. It's like the Indian guy, Vec, you know, whatever his name is. The guy who's running for president as a Republican.
Ramaswamy or
whatever. Terrible name. But he's very, very articulate and well-spoken and with no accent and no, you know, he's like an American. I don't know if he's born here or not, but he's
an American. Remember, there were two Indian people of Indian descent running for the Republican nomination.
I didn't know two of them. Who's the other one?
Nikki Haley.
Oh, she's Indian background?
I don't know if it's complete Indian, but that part of the world. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, well, that's good. I mean, I like that.
That's a major thing here. I mean, you know, obviously in Britain, which has a larger percentage of the population that's from India or Pakistan or Bengal or anywhere in that country, Nepalese, in that area of the world. Here, not so much. There isn't as much of a percentage of the population, but I think that's heartening to see. I mean, really, but I just thought that the fact that she was a Black Jewish Ethiopian Israeli,
sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, you know,
it's like, yeah. I mean, but it was, as far as those elements, you know, as far as her background goes, she's like the perfect candidate. I mean, you could have, if you try to invent a character, you couldn't have come up with something as good.
You say she was in the Israeli army too, right?
Mm-hmm. She's a paratrooper.
Jesus.
So,
Jesus.
yeah.
So she's military background. I mean, just great.
Exactly. And
take a chance on her without even knowing what her policies are.
Exactly. And she's got some political background because she is in local politics. So, I mean, talk about really, you couldn't invent this. George Santos tried to invent, he made up all this stuff about himself, and he didn't make up anything nearly as good as what she is. So
okay, so let's end on an upbeat, and we're done. Pretty good show. I mean, we got very cordial today.
And I want to emphasize that Dennis may have said a few words, but they were well spoken, and I agreed with them. So
okay, good enough. All right, all you folks out, all you bunnies, go have a glass of milk and get some shut eye, and see you next time. And this is going viral on 2023, December 20th, ending off with Ken Aaron, Dennis Goldstein, and Mike Jankowitz. Good night. Hope to see you next time.